All right, it's time for a field report. And with that comes the intrepid director that we all know and love, the man behind such epics as Fubar, The Witcher, Umbrella Academy, Daredevil,
Oh my
one of
God.
the aces with Marvel Television, Mr. Steve Surjik. Buddy, good to see you. You've been missed.
It's great to see you too. It's been a long time, and I'm delighted to be here.
Likewise,
And, and
I want to point out before you go down the rabbit hole on it, because you're going to want to ditch this part of it. You, meaning Steve Surjik's going to want to not to mention this, but he is one of the heroes who's helped us with our combat radio Christmas Carol for a cure the last couple of years for the children battling NMOSD in the hospital. And behind him is a signed guitar signed by the Temptations, which was also part of the cause. And every once in a while, he takes it down and makes music. So he claims.
I didn't say music. I said it takes time to make noise,
Noise,
and you
noise.
can see it right up here,
Yeah,
right over my right shoulder there. But yeah, it's signed by the Temptations, and it makes a beautiful sound. Beautiful
it
sound.
does. Especially when you're playing it, my friend. Some good shots of us on the red carpet from that night, but I'll save those for later. It's good to see you. And with you comes the dynamite dynamo package of film awesomeness. And you suggested something out of the dark ages of, I think, the 1980s.
Our masters!
What do these things want, and why are they here?
You still don't get it, do you, boy?
They have recruited the rich and the powerful.
They're running the whole show.
Wake up! They're all about you, all around you. Blinded us to the truth.
Take a look.
They are safe as long as they are not discovered.
I don't know what they are or where they came from, but we gotta stop them.
Stay away from me. Put these on. They have us. Look at them. They're everywhere. Our owners.
We have no other choice.
I don't like this one bit.
Leave it alone, man. It ain't none of my business, ain't none of yours.
We have been lulled into a trance.
Listen to what I'm saying to you. We're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble.
Control us.
You're sending some kind of signals out of TV sets.
I've got one that can see.
Mama don't like tattletale.
Now we start spilling some blood.
Let's go.
Push a button.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
From a field report standpoint, we've talked about a lot of great talents out there who've, blown the roof off of various theaters, but this is a very smart movie. And in a frightening sense, this movie becomes smarter the longer we go. This
Yes,
is
yes.
this,
I had not seen this movie before. They live. Um,
yeah.
and
I can't believe that.
It's unbelievable too. Yeah, I think it's been on a couple of lists that I've missed, like where I've been either in a class with it on, or
Mhm.
got on my way to see. I just never got to it. So when I watched it, it was shocking how relevant it was for our day. Is that the
Yeah.
good way of putting it?
It becomes more relevant. I mean, I think it felt relevant in 1988, 89 when it came out, but man, now it's like I think the political machine was better at trying to hide their intentions, and now they really don't give a fuck. And in a world where most people are living paycheck to paycheck, almost like an indentured service type sense, the themes of this movie really hit home, and why society, the top tier of society, may want to keep you at that level. You don't have the savings to strike. You don't have the savings to fight the machine. You don't have the means to shop anywhere for some of us except with these bulk, soul small business crushing juggernauts like Walmart. And all of this, these are all themes. I know Carpenter has said this is a middle finger to Reagan, but it's really a middle finger to a lot of it's a middle finger to a lot of elements, basically. But what were your first impressions watching this, having not seen it before?
Capitalism too. Yeah. Well, I was shocked at two things that really stood out to me. One was the structure of the film and the way that it kind of in its narrative qualities were incredibly well handled. They were handled by he's the best at that. And so you see this incredible work with narrative, with character, with story, and it's structured like like the original story. A stranger enters town, right?
They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of snakes is under their lips. Their mouths are full of bitterness and curses. And in their paths, nothing but ruin and misery. And the fear of God is not before their eyes. They have taken the hearts and minds of our leaders. They have recruited the rich and the powerful. And they have blinded us to the truth. And our human spirit is corrupted. Why do we worship greed? Because outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners. Our owners. They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around.
Walking in, he's looking for a job, and he ends up at a construction site where he's befriended by someone else, and they head back for a place, for some food at an encampment. Now, I say that it sounds like that could also be, a Steinbeck novel. It's the same kind of structure. It's very straightforward. But the science fiction elements of it are, they're handled in a really smart way, but they're limited. Like you can't, a lot of these ideas. Okay, here we go. Spoiler alert. There's glasses that you put on and you can see things that no one else can see. You can see the reality of what's around you. And he comes upon these sort of by happenstance. And he recognizes that there's basically an alien invasion occurring. At any rate, the bottom line is that these glasses give you the ability to see things that no one else does. And so he starts to rise up and rebel against that. And that's what the story is about. And it's very, very straightforward story. And the story is really well handled. I was going to say that it struck me that the visual effects couldn't be that. I mean, we're so used to a certain level of special effects, of visual effects, that, this is shockingly primitive, 1987, right? I mean, shockingly primitive.
Yet so effective.
Incredibly effective. Like you don't really, it's like a play in a way. Like when you go to see a play and you're in person, you're watching people act out and they're acting like they're riding a horse. You don't really care that there's no horse on stage. You kind of buy into it. And that's what he does here. He just, there is no horse on stage, but you buy into it. And it's really something else. He's really a genius.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite directors as a kid, in part because he was so interesting and inventive with what it's like his worlds are just, Halloween, they live. It's like it's the real world, but it's just a little bit off center to know that there's something, like very much like we were just talking about with Lynch, like when you go beneath the Beaver Cleaver neighborhood in Blue Velvet, there's like all the bugs like cannibalizing some carcass, and it's like I feel like the same sort of sense of impending doom with the Carpenter scene, that just below the surface, man, all hell is about to break loose. And this one, it's funny because it is based on a short story, 8:00 in the morning, written by Ray Nelson. It's a good short story, actually, very short, but in that format, there's no sunglasses. A hypnotist wakes him up, and all of a sudden he can see through that process aliens that no one else can, and then he goes on basically a killing spree, but in a much more barbaric sense because he doesn't have the weapons and means that the character here have. They're both named Nada after nothing. You got nothing, implying I think that it's like the working poor that are going to start this rebellion, and that's probably the way it's going to go in real life too. I hate to tell you, people, the working poor are going to be the ones that sparked the fuse, so to speak. But it's good because it slowly unfolds. I mean, I've heard some people say this is a slow burn, but it unfolds at a good pace for me.
No, it goes I think it's a fast-moving train, frankly. I mean, there isn't a scene that is out of place. There isn't a moment that doesn't lead to the next plot point. There isn't there isn't a plot point that doesn't define a character detail. It's all really well constructed. And what I guess I found a little shocking when I'm talking about the primitive visual effects is just that, this is a guy who did a movie in 1982, so 4 or 5 years before that, called The Thing.
It isn't Benning.
His version of The Thing was incredibly sophisticated visual effects. They don't get better. Talk to the people that did those effects back again in film school again. They were incredibly inventive, and they were doing things that you look at them and you go, man, that when I watched it again last night. I watched The Thing again last night, and it's shockingly grotesque and bizarre in its presentation of what the thing is. Like you don't get a better thing than The Thing. The Thing was there'll never be a better thing. It is really
no.
But then you go 5 years later, you would think that level of visual sophistication would have sort of. But I guess the budgetary constraints and the schedule and stuff just made it so that they did. But as you said, there's nothing really lacking in They Live. It's just maybe I expected something that was more sophisticated, like The Thing. I don't know.
It makes sense, and I can see why your expectations are there. I mean, The Thing is another very smart movie, and that had Universal Pictures behind it. They had a year of prep on that. Oddly enough, our studio, before it was wrecked for Nintendo Land on the Universal Studios backlot, was the same office where they did post-production on The Thing, next to Stage 12, where they shot all the interior kennel scenes. So we were always mystified because on the stage wall of the stage is the plaque with all the movies. So a little bit of research, when they see The Thing 1982, you go, what was shot on this stage? Because I think they utilized a few of the stages. So, obviously.
Those kennels, the kennels, like the kennels in The Thing.
Incredible.
They're just like, just again, for the audience, there was a dog that is being chased at the opening. They're being chased by a bunch of Norwegians in a helicopter. They're shooting at it. And it kind of goes wrong, and the poor Norwegian, and you're sort of rooting for the dog, of course, but the Norwegians accidentally crash and explode. I'm just skipping over and then that dog becomes a friend of of this other outpost that they witnessed. This American outpost in Antarctica witnessed the Norwegian helicopter go down. So the dog comes in, and they eventually put it into the kennel. And of course, there's a lot of arguments about why you only put it in the kennel tonight. Why did you put it in the kennel yesterday when it came in here? How long were you with the dog by yourself? I don't know, a couple of minutes, maybe an hour. It's the creepiest horror movie structurally that I can think of. It's great movie.
Right.
Great.
Oh, without a doubt. And screenwriter Bill Lancaster on that, thread all these rich elements of exactly like you say, Blair being like, you telling me you didn't put this thing in the kennel until last night? All these things that raise suspicion on each character, and and the element of the dog going into a room where you only see the silhouette of a man that's probably about to get attacked. And then you and I have a lot of these conversations where you don't have a movie if your characters don't do this, but we always express our frustration like, Ash, why'd you open the goddamn airlock? Well, again, you don't have a movie if he doesn't do it. But the same with The Thing, where they go to the Norwegian camp and they see the burned out Two-Face guy, and he's like, hey, let's bring this thing back to the lab. I'd be like, no. No,
Yes.
but you have to bring it back, and just
Yeah.
like you have to take the dog in, you have
But
to.
they deal with it that way too. They're like, no. And then cut to they're unwrapping this burnt up thing in their
Yeah,
lab, and they're looking at it going, what is this thing? I don't know.
yeah.
We found this.
Jesus Christ.
Blair, I'd like you to start an autopsy right away.
And
Yeah, that dog. Oof, that dog.
it's a great example of both John Carpenter's directorship, but also the script, where every time they put a lid on it or try to govern the situation, it spirals out of control again. Like they get through the blood test with all the shock and, the concussion that was. Then they decide they're going to go out and give Blair the task, but they're going to leave Childs inside to guard the door and be like, well, hold up. We're not splitting up. We just got like the leadership kind of unravels at that point. And you're just like, the decisions here. Hold on.
But that's really, if I were to look at They Lived, I would say this is a political movie, really largely about, and it's a great political movie because it doesn't feel like one really. It just feels like there's aliens invading. The Thing, I would say, is a monster that is conjured out of our mistrust for each other. Like you have this group of individuals that don't know who in their group has been infected by the Thing. And this turns it into, you were just saying, the first thing you were saying like the leadership is like out of control, like it's fracturing and it's breaking up and no one knows what to do. And they're all arguing and they're fighting. And that's it. The blood test was definitely a good example of that. That was,
and
moment. Everyone is, I'm looking at you and you're looking at me. And we're saying, who's got the virus? And now, interestingly, when I was in London working on The Witcher, and there was rumors of this virus spreading around, and we decided that we wanted to do, because everybody would look at one another. We were supposed to wear masks and stuff. I had bought a whole bunch of masks. No one on the crew wanted to wear them. Christopher, our lead from Game of Thrones, was actually in The Thing, but not. There was the remake of The Thing in 2011. But anyway, we were starting to build a little script. We were going to build like who has the disease, who has the virus, because we knew numerically there was someone in that group of 200 or 300 people that probably had the virus. Right? So and he wanted to play along, and we were going to restructure some scenes from The Thing, right? during COVID. And we thought that was really funny. Then suddenly, almost a day later, it wasn't funny because Christopher had the virus and we were all on our way back to California, on an airplane because they'd sent us all home. It was pretty crazy. Anyway, that's a side story that didn't sell very well, but there it is.
No, the thing about the thing is that mystery element again of, sort of that Agatha Christie sense, like, who is it?
Yeah.
And we're trapped here. And anytime you're trapped, I mean, now it's a mechanism that I think people employ a little too much. But when The Thing came out, you didn't see that a lot of people trapped in a place where there's no choice but to fight it out. You saw it in Alien. occasionally prior to that, but now it's sort of like I think people use it as like a 30% a crutch and like 30% of the project. Like let's trap them on something.
Yeah, I call it the haunted house scenario. Like you can't, I don't know, for whatever reason, you can't get out, can't get off the island, can't get out of the research facility in Antarctica, can't get off the Nostradamus and Alien. Like you're stuck there. You're stuck there with a dozen or less dudes and women who are all, you look at each one of them differently because you don't know if they're the ones that will betray you, you know?
Yeah. And I would say maybe in this sense with They Live, like you're stuck on the planet. The invasions happened. And now, like, you see this quite a lot with politicians. They will buy their underlings and give them their piece of the wealth for a sense of servitude and service. Like and that's what these aliens do. Like, we're going to give these police officers who don't make much money, and we're going to buy them, and they're going to govern these, basically be our prison guards. You know, and they're going to clean up the shanty town, which is a very Grapes of Wrath. You said Steinbeck earlier. It did feel like Grapes of Wrath. Yeah. And we're going to flush through this like the Army Corps of Engineers and flush everything out into a dumpster. And we're going to beat these guys. And of course, that's the element of it that you don't see immediately is they're flushing a shanty town into the street. But when he's running through the alleys, he sees the police officers target resistance members specifically with brutal takedowns, like complete.
Well, they're killing the blind man, the blind preacher, who can see things, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're back to They Live is definitely, when the police come through. Well, they say you know, some of the lines are things like, you know, why don't you just come with us and don't fight it? They're going to win anyway. We'll be rich. Right. They promised us money, and they'll give you money too. Life will be good. You don't have to fight it, you know. And it made me almost nauseous because it's so relevant to what we're experiencing right now politically, you know. Kind of
it puts the situation in front of you. Like, where do you fall? Are you going to accept what is essentially what amounts to a bribe and become more comfortable, or are you going to fight for the equality of everyone involved and maybe have it a little rougher and get to a point, hopefully, where things are better? I mean, it's like people have to make this decision, you know, and then people always factor those things in with every decision they make, I think. So the movie really puts it right in front of you for you to see. But what's interesting is it ends in a television station, which is very appropriate. There's a unique cut in it too.
I think you have to point out that in their quest to kind of find out how these aliens operate and why everyone is so subservient to them, they find out that there's a signal that goes out via radio station or TV station, and they decide that they're going to stop that signal, and then people will rise up and they will get rid of the aliens.
Hey, fellas, I got a couple of my buddies here. Thought I'd give them the grand tour. Think we can go inside?
Be serious. You have your authorization cards.
Right here. Watch the door. Soundproof. Where's that signal?
It's up on the roof, I think.
Holly works in there. If she made it, maybe we can find her. Then we can go to the roof and break that signal, man.
Wait, boys, wait. You're making a big mistake.
You made the mistake.
No, you gotta listen to me. I thought you boys understood. It's business. That's all it is. You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? Now, they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone, let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life, too. Now, I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
You do it to your own kind.
What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team. See ya, boys.
Let's go.
Right? And they end up at the TV station, and they end up, you know, he ends up, you know, the stranger that came to town ends up on the cross at the end. Like he ends up shooting at the at the transmitter,
he brings it
tower,
down.
and they kill him, and he falls into the fire and he burns, and that's the end of it. But but you know that he has been successful in stopping the signal to to humanity that's making them subservient. Am I right?
You are right. Two things about what you're saying that I love. I love that Siskel and Ebert are actually two of the aliens or at least Siskel is one in the montage at the end, that he's one of the. So obviously Carpenter has some direct counter commentary on those guys, but they give him. There's a pretty effective tour of the machine, the system under the city, of like these concrete looking hallways and like this transportation device where they show people going to other planets, and it's like, wait, and he's like, these are everywhere. Like I'm surprised this isn't a TV series, because the scope of this thing, from at least my imagination standpoint, can get very vast. There's a unique cut in this conclusion when they Keith David, who one of the heroes of Combat Radio's Christmas Carol for a Cure, in a very Dickensian fashion, throws a grenade into a newsroom and blows it. But they cut from that explosion to like an executive watching that happen on the screen that we have never. I thought this was a real unique creative choice. They cut to this executive watching it happen on the screen. She's like, what the hell is happening? And the camera follows her as she walks out. We've never even seen this character, but explosion, cut to someone in another room watching it going, what the hell? Very unique editorial choice. And then, of course, they come blowing through the room that she's trying to exit through. And I thought that kind of caught my eye as like a little bit of fun between the director and the editor. Good way to do it.
Yeah, I recognize that they were using the technology at a TV station to help tell their story spatially, and I was one of those guys that did that. It was fairly unique. Yeah.
And this is also produced by Shep Gordon, who was Alice Cooper's manager, a music guy. So, and Larry Franco,
I didn't know
producer, Larry Franco appears in it too. He also appears in The Thing. He's the Norwegian helicopter sniper.
Oh, is it really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, so he pops up in these movies, but I heard him saying once that the concept, probably behind the short story, but certainly in play when they were talking about the film, was that I guess in the 60s, that there was a rumor about a signal going out that encouraged people or propelled people to do ridiculous amounts of buying. Like it cued them to buy 100 cans of dog food or 100 boxes of cereal. It turned out to not be real, but it was like a thing that was under investigation at the time. And I think they took some inspiration from this, that there's like the whole signal that goes out and it's like, consume.
There was a time when it's called subliminal seduction. I think it was a book or an article in Life magazine where they were accusing commercial artists of incorporating signals in the photographs and sounds of the record of the recording in the images that you watched that would have an effect on your consumption habits. Yeah. And it was a pretty big thing in the early 70s. I don't remember. I was pretty young when it was happening, but it was people were arguing, well, you can't just because. And it's interesting because our main character in They Live would put on these glasses and he would see a poster for something or another for a car, and it would say consume, buy more, submit, do what you're told. Really blatant, directives, but it was always behind something that was very, I would say, it looked innocent, and that I found that was really kind of the same thing you're talking about. They were basically riffing off of that popular, I guess it was, was it a popular myth or what maybe it did happen. Maybe they were putting images in. And in the subliminal seduction, the world of subliminal seduction, they would actually use examples. Like they could pull up a picture of someone with a drink and inside of it, it would say orgy or something, So maybe because when you drink, you think maybe you're going to get lucky with whatever. It was all these weird kind of connections. And so that they were really using that as a subtext for how this thing operated. And I liked it because whether or not there's a direct line and whether or not, there's a direct order from someone, we're definitely susceptible to commercials. Otherwise, we wouldn't buy cars.
So the same thing this film is critical of, the governmental machine that oppresses all of us, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, is probably the same thing that I can see a guy running down a hallway with reels of this film at like some secure CIA base in some third world country in some like black ops sector, and just, I've got our next project. If we can somehow harness the power of this signal, and they probably screamed "They live" and not even got the irony of it, and just said, "Oh, this is great. We have to try and apply." But Carpenter is a good director in this sense because it's a very smart movie, and the temptation I think would have been for some people to really overplay this right out of the gate. But the way it sort of unfolds, with him watching the preacher get arrested, then ending up in the homeless camp and seeing the church with the fake choir music. And I should point out that we just lost Peter Jason, who plays Gilbert, the resistance leader, one of our favorites around here. That all comes together, and it's like sunglasses. It's like, well, I'm just going to put these on because it's California, and then what, the famous,
our lead sees them, the team of subversives, I guess, in their church being harassed by the police. So he goes and they've already swept them out, and he finds, there was a false wall that he goes through, and he finds a collection of various items, including these glasses, a box of these glasses. Kind of how, but anyway, that's and those people that were in that church were organizing to become the resistance.
Can you imagine that, Steve? Go ahead, finish your thought.
No, I can't imagine that. And the reality is that set, well, first of all, there was the encampment. The encampment was probably a set that cost $5, like it would cost nothing, right? I mean, it was basically a couple of campfires, bunch of tents. And then but it was adjacent to like something that wasn't even a church, but they called it a church, and they made it a church with a little bit of simple carpentry. And then they saw the group, get swept out of there by the cops. Anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. He eventually joins the uprising, and he is part of the resistance. But they're sort of toasting their future when the doors break in, and all of a sudden police are there shooting at them again. And there's enough violence to keep you interested. It's good gunfights. But it's really a story about 2025. That's what it is.
And that's why you were saying you got nauseous watching it. The thing about it, like we said, is they used to be a lot more secretive in their intent. And now they're just out there selling you hard on what their intentions are, depending on where your alignment's going to be. And so that is something you have to be prepared for. But the idea of just opening up a case of sunglasses one day and seeing the complete a landscape of the obvious.
And They Live is really something that's I was very excited and delighted to stumble upon this late in my life. I'm so happy you recommended it. I enjoyed it immensely, and it's created all kinds of questions about his career. Now I have to watch everything he's ever done. Well, I've already seen a lot of it, but
He's the master. Carpenter is the master of a setup. Um, whether it's Prince of Darkness or even some of the films that weren't as like heralded as The Thing, which I think is one of the best movies ever made. He does set these movies up like a master. The conclusion isn't always what you want, but he can strategically unfold something in front of you as an audience member, and you're like, I am into this. This whatever's happening here, I'm into. The Fog. I mean, pick your Assault on Precinct 13. Pick your movie. He can unfold it.
Yeah,
and
no, he's really crafty. He has a lot of craft, a lot of skills, and his politics are good. And you know, I even think of the very end scene, in The Thing when they're outside and it's cold and the wind is blowing, everything's been burnt up, and the Thing is out there somewhere, and they're hiding behind their half track, whatever it is. And he says, apparently, this was not the ending that was written, but they didn't know what to do with the ending, and so the lead actor was saying, I think it should be enigmatic. We don't know how it's going to end. We don't know, is this a life? Where we're going with this? So he said something. Do you remember the last line? He said something like,
"We've got any surprises? Maybe we're not in a shape to do anything about it," or something like that. Yeah, it's basically
we'll just lay here and see what happens. It's something like something that's really like, what? And at the time, that was that kind of ending is just unacceptable. People go nuts, but it's a good ending because that's what it was about. Really, like, we don't know what it is, where it's going.
So when I moved from Warner Brothers to the Warner Hollywood lot, I was based next to Frank Darabont, who's had someone in his office who apparently got hired out to do like a prequel script, but it's not the one they ultimately went with. But at the time, he got the job. Leave it to one of Frank Darabont's guys, right? But later, talking to David Foster, who produced The Thing, because he and I went back to Warner. I started delivering mail to his office when I started at Warner Brothers, something he always wished I never would remind him of. But he would talk about how both guys were aware in various conversations that there was a scene that they were under the impression was shot of the Kurt Russell character McCready surviving and being taken to like a military station. Like they shot it to have it, but then opted not to use it. And obviously you can't beat the internet. So someone's going to either do their research or knows already from a fandom perspective, whether or not we're right on that. But so
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So there might be something out there that they put, or maybe it already exists on like a special feature somewhere. But I do like that it ends like that. And I think that's kind of a fitting ending. I do love suicide missions, though, in my movies.
Yeah, I do too. There's nothing wrong with a good suicide mission, particularly when you save all of humanity. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. We buy into it biblically, as they say. And in this, but in this case, I don't really get this. In They Live, that's definitely what's going on. In The Thing, it's more of a, well, we'll see. We don't know, but I do understand that it's a perfect movie for a prequel because of the setup of the Norwegians and everything that they were doing, right? Like, that's a perfect for that.
Yeah, which you worked with one of those guys from the prequel, right? You said on The Witcher.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, like for me personally, like there's some moments in it that are so smart, and one of them is, when Bennings is getting wrapped up and absorbed, when the body on like the gurney moves behind him. Typical Carpenter. And, it doesn't even matter. Even when it's coming, you just love to see it. And he does that shift. I mean, he did that in The Fog, too, where like the body moves under the sheet or what have you. And Windows comes back wearing sunglasses and sees Bennings getting like wrapped up in this monster. They don't show it, but they do it with sound. He drops the keys. And that opens up who's got the keys for the blood test when they open up the locker and they have that round of suspicious inquiries, like who did it? And I wonder, like, was that in the script to put that sound there, do you think? Or do you think they thought, let's go back and do a moment where we have a keys dropping to open up?
They probably would have made them show the keys hit the ground,
I think so too.
So I think it's probably post-production, but it's interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And right before the blood test, There was the whole test where the doctor was trashing the place. He was smashing everything.
Yeah.
He was shooting everyone. And what was he doing? He was really going for a Hail Mary, save the world,
Right.
thing.
Right.
He didn't want anyone to get out of there. His thing was stop everyone from leaving the station. It'll be okay. We'll just put this thing to rest again. It's spooky shit, man. It's really spooky shit. Like
for sure. Like when he's looking at his like Atari era River Raid graphics of like what can happen to the world in like 47,000 hours or something, and the camera goes from the graphics or from his face down to a bottle of vodka and a handgun. It's not going. We're not going to a pleasant place, And then, of course, later when they go visit him, like they have questions for him or something, they go out to the shed during the storm. And that's the other thing I love. Once the storm makes going outside close to impossible, man, it ratchets up the tension. But when they go out to see him, he's got like the little touch of the noose, like, hanging out there. And he's like suspiciously at his desk. Like, if you were locked in a shed like that, that place would be turned upside down. You'd be doing all kinds of things to keep yourself entertained for 24 hours a day.
The ceiling.
Yeah. And we find out he's dug a tunnel and started building a spaceship. But he's like, it's almost like it's perfect in the sense that Kurt Russell throws open the window and he's like, hey, have you seen Fuchs? And he's like, it's almost like the Blair character is like, run back at his desk and be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're asking me a question? Like a kid who's doing something mischievous down a tunnel building his man, and he's suddenly at his desk like, oh, hi.
Inexplicable. And yet he embraced it in such a way that gave him super alien powers.
Yeah.
Really true. Yeah. Like normally, because you do that scene, people say to you, well, how do you get from building where do you get the stuff from to build, like where does town come from?
Yeah.
Busy out here all by himself.
What is it?
Something he's been making.
It's a ship of some kind. He stole the parts from the helicopter.
Smart, SOB. Put it together piece by piece.
Where was he trying to go?
Any place but here.
It's an alien. And it is great. He's sitting there. It's truly a moment where you go, well, that's weird. He's just sitting there like.
Yeah. He just happens to be sitting there locked in this thing for 24 hours. It hasn't been ripped apart or he hasn't tried to punch a hole in the wall. He's just conveniently sitting there like a student in Catholic school about to get whipped. He's like suddenly in his place. And then of course he does the whole thing of begging like, hey man, I'm hearing weird things out here. You got to get me out of here. And then that kind of sets back the suspicion by ramping the suspicion up. Like they're like, oh no, you're staying in here. And then the thing is after that window closes, the thing's like, yeah, back to my work down the tunnel. I got you fuckers. It's like, damn, someone should do a recut from the thing's perspective.
That's true. That's true. What does the thing do? The thing basically emulates the life form that it's next to. And it turns it wants to turn into you basically. So when you see the thing in its changing shape and like actually in the process of morphing into a larger, stronger thing, you'll see the head of the dog that it eaten. You'll see a part of a person all twisted and broken. You'll see a kangaroo's leg stick out of it. Like it's just a gigantic sort of biological explanation of its past. It's amazing. It's so smart.
Right. You can see all the signatures from 1,000 years prior appear and when it's doing its shape shifting. And I love sort of the basic human simplicity in it all. We hear the sound from the kennel because MacReady's going to get a beer in the middle of the night. Like, how real is that? And then he just hears this ghostly howling. The soundscape in the movie is brilliant. Yeah, and he's
Amazing. Yeah.
he's like,
What the
that
fuck was
doesn't
that?
sound right. So he's
Why are
like,
the dogs
but
going crazy? And the poor dogs, like they spend time before that, they spend time establishing that, the regular dogs that are there they throw in the monster dog, and it just looks like a regular Malamute or whatever, and he sits there, and all the other dogs like move away from it, and all the other dogs are like growling at it, and other dogs are scared. Then you see it start doing its thing. Those other dogs are like biting a hole in the steel mesh. They want to get out so bad, and when that it finally gets out, I'm like rooting for those dogs.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
to.
And
They
you know,
really, they really make you dig. They make you pull for even the which like the good dogs versus the bad dog. I mean,
yeah. I mean, every frame in the movie is so efficient. Like none of it is wasted. They don't. And one of the things I do love about Carpenter is there would be the temptation to over-explain these movies and these situations now, and he leaves it to you. You don't know the backstory of the character and They Live. You don't need to know. You make it up. You don't know some of this about some of these guys, or you just start to piece together your own sort of primitive prequel to why we are here in this situation in Antarctica. And I love that about it. It doesn't,
and why do they have a flamethrower at the research facility laboratory in Antarctica? Like, I don't care because I'm so glad it's there. I'm just delighted it's there. I was so relieved that they had a flamethrower, I was like, oh, thank God.
Right. In a possible cabin fever experience, the idea that you'd have shotguns locked behind glass. All right. But I'm with it every bit of the way. Like he busts it out, he pulls that gun out, a box of shells, they're ready to go. Why do we have flamethrowers? We have flamethrowers. That's all you need to know. And maybe it's for burning the ice, but you need that. And props to them because
the alien that responds very poorly to the flamethrower. It doesn't like the flamethrower at all. Like if it had a voice in the right end of the script, it would not have a flamethrower.
Yeah. Did you know? What's that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But the character that runs and gets the flamethrower, it's during the kennel scene when Buddy comes by to get his beer, and he runs, and on his way in, he's like yells, get the flamethrower or whatever. Tell John to get the flamethrower, and he's like, later on, John is like, what? I said, get the flamethrower or pull the trigger, whatever he says. And finally, the dog, the part dog, part thing is a flame, and everybody's gassed. What the hell was that?
Yeah, because right now I think the temptation would be like, well, do we have an explanation as to why there are flamethrowers here? And did we show the actor running and getting the flamethrower?
Exactly,
no,
right. No.
But what's great about it is that that's all disposed of for efficiency. And boom, that guy comes running through the door with the flamethrower. And, he has a very classic pause of shock, which I think is very appropriate. And he has to be told to burn it. And then, of course.
But of course, we read in, is he part of that? Is he part of that team? Why is he not? I mean, I did. I thought, is he got something going on with the dog and the Gugamug and anyway.
Yeah. Did you know who was the thing, or were you surprised by it when you rewatched it? Did you have a sense?
I've seen it so many times now. It's sort of, I just kind of see how they, and I didn't know. I was always tricked. I always got the wrong guy,
I mean, they didn't know during production, I think.
They didn't know. Oh, yeah. Right.
I don't think they did. I think they've kind of confessed they didn't. But it could be anyone. That's what's great about it. It could be the guy that's suspiciously asleep at the radio and isn't contacting anyone. Who knows?
Right. Yes,
it could be any of these guys, but that's what's fantastic about it from top to bottom. And just the discovery of the ship and Albert Whitlock's mat work. What a great movie
great. If everybody was at the top of the game. And it was the best a description of, the best integration of 3D, of CG, of prosthetics. It was just amazing. And never mind all that, but the actual inventive, the innovation that was used in describing the thing was amazing. Like that thing, when those spider legs pop out of that guy's head, when it goes for a walk, like we are so shocked as an audience that the only people that are more shocked than us are the people that are in the movie that are going, what the hell was that?
Yeah. It's gold, though. You ratcheted it up by having just a series of events explode one into the next. And yeah, by the end of the movie, you're so exhausted by circumstance that you feel like, yeah, that's a good out. You get to freeze to death with a bottle of scotch in your hands. You've won at that point. You've beaten the scenario. You beat the scenario, because how do you go back in the world after experiencing that? If a rescue team brings you back, how do you go back in the world and be like, excuse me?
Yeah, there's some bad things happened in our ice camp.
Yeah,
it's really, the thing is really a 10 out of 10. There's no way out.
Yeah,
They live for me as a 10 out of 10 as well, but for different reasons. It's a must-see political movie. Like, it's really a great, shocking expose of where we're at right now.
Yeah, for sure. Is Eraserhead your favorite Lynch film?
Nope. I think Blue Velvet is my favorite, but they're both really seminal pieces. They're both really important, and I dig them both. I mean, Eraserhead is so much more audacious. It's so much braver in so many ways. But as I said earlier, I would say that Blue Velvet is the best way to get into it. If you want to enter into that world, that's the journey to take. Start with Blue Velvet.
I love that you actually took your own short film on a road show with Eraserhead as a double feature and preview. That's very smart.
It's so pretentious. I cannot, in retrospect, I can't believe I did that. But and my short film wasn't. It was a formal piece, but it was nowhere near that level of artistry or integrity But still, I created my own fan base with it. Because a lot of people didn't like Eraserhead, but liked my short film because, of course, they could understand it because it wasn't as great a movie. But anyway,
I think Lynch would have loved hearing that you did that.
That's funny.
That seems like the type of thing he would have really been enthusiastic about. Yeah. And I know a few people that worked with Lynch in closing, and they all have great stories to tell about him as a person, which is what you hope to hear. The working angle, I don't think they could make much of it at the time, and really can't really explain it other than the way everyone in this town explains it when they're given an opportunity, that it was great. He was great to work with, but I do think they liked him as a person, which is much like they love Steve Surjik. Steve Surjik is the most admired guy in town.
That's hilarious, man. You're hilarious.
Oh, for sure.
You make me laugh. I love you. I cherish you and love your show. And I hope that we can continue to raise money for the hospital.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We actually, in January, just lost a little boy who was actually at our event, and it put things in perspective. And it reminded me, well, it reminded everyone who got the news why we do these things. I mean, it's one night out of the year. It does at times feel like it's a big ask of people. I mean, you're royalty at the event, so it's nice. People love to engage at these events with people whose work they admire. But it has definitely become more and more worth it with a sense of loss. It was a critical reminder of why there's so much sacrifice that goes into this show and why we do it. And we were talking about your Temptation guitar earlier, and the reason the Temptations signed it, the reason you have it, is because people care, and that gives me hope in this situation.
And let's not forget that I aspire to play guitar. There's that too. I'm not trying to minimize the other, but like, you're providing a service through these various sales that you have that are really great. And even I participate in that, and it's been great. And I think that when I was at that event, I had the opportunity to speak to one of the doctors that's very, very central to the research for the research and development of these drugs that help control NOSE. I forget the name of the drug.
NMOSD.
NMOSD.
No, finish your thought. I got something to tell you about that though, real quick.
Well, no, but we spoke about it, and I know I probably know 1% more than a lot of the people that are at that gathering, because I used to live with someone who worked in epidemiology and white T cell research at McGill, and so I talked to them about that a lot. And his whole take on this is really quite radical. It's really about how the body controls its immune system, because his approach to cancer research is really about how the body controls cancer. Because we, of course, as humans, we eliminate many cancers every day in our body, not even knowing that they're there. And other times we're not unable to, and that is a function of our immune system, apparently, according to the good doctor.
Right. What you're referring to is his CAR T therapy strategy, which is in play with some clinical trials and showing some very impressive results. He talked to me after he talked to you a few weeks later, and he goes, "Your friend Steve Surjik, he
You're lying
really
to me,
knows a
but
lot about this." What's that?
You're such a liar.
No,
Look
no,
what-
he really did say that. I'm not kidding you. He's like, your friend Steve really knows a lot about this. You know, because you did come in research like any great director, you knew your subject matter, and you did came in, and I did see you talking to him for a while, and that was, I think, refreshing for him because he does a lot of from like ground level explaining. But you came at him of like, look, I know a bit about this, but when he had a chance to engage with you, I think he felt validated about his strategies because he's now got that in the clinical trials, and people are starting to understand what he's doing, and he's starting to show results, which is exciting because that could mean eradication of about 60 to 80% of your cancers. So
That's
after
pretty big.
after years of going at it, I tell people all the time, we're all tired of hearing it. We've heard it for years, but now I can tell you they are close to the cure they've been talking about. And he's the front runner. He should get the Nobel Prize for it, I think. But God bless you for being a part. Dr. Michael Yeaman, Yeaman at UCLA. Yeah.
He was very, very thoughtful.
Well, let me just add, God bless you for being a part of that event. You gave it a lot of gravitas. You gave it credibility. You gave people a talking point that they were thrilled about, having been at the event with you, having met you, been on the red carpet with you. You validate a lot of the direction we're trying to go in, and I'm indebted to you for that. You are, of course, a hero. You dismiss that, but that's exactly what a hero does. They step up and they get involved and they lend their firepower where they can to a life-saving cause, and you did that, my friend. I'm going to give you the last word on Lynch and The Thing, and then we'll sign off. See these movies.
I'm gonna just start off by saying that when I spoke to Dr. Michael about the I was asking him, do you think that there needs to be more money in this area of disease research, or is it more research? Sometimes the pipeline is narrow, so you can't, it has a certain speed at which the research goes, and it can't be accelerated. He said, no, it's not money, it's not time, it's strategy. We need strategy. And I think that the difference between in the filmmakers that we discussed today, David Lynch and Mr. They Live,
Carpenter.
It's the difference between the thing that makes a director great, like David Lynch or John Carpenter, is this strategy that they employ when they're making their movie. It's never related to money. It's never related to time. It's really about like how they can. It's the way they approach the material, and that's, a lot of people will say in film school, a lot of people will say, oh, they need more, it's easy to make a movie if you have a lot of money, or, the whole Hollywood is just about money, but it isn't. It's about ideas. And David Lynch and Carpenter proved that again and again. So,
yeah. Well put, my friend. And the Steve Surjik machine.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again, and we'll redo the whole thing.
Yes. The generator of creative ideas is out. All right, everybody. Catch you next time.
Hello, my name is Simon Williamson. Help us find a cure for NMOSD, neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder, and with it, cancer. Please go to the Guthrie Jackson Foundation and donate if you can.